The moment you need her, you've already lost her. Read that again. Not because it sounds harsh, but because it's the truth most men spend years avoiding, and it's the truth that will set you free. You don't gain power by chasing her. You don't earn her respect by pleasing her. And you definitely don't create attraction by proving your worth over and over again like some audition tape for love. Real power? It begins the moment you stop looking outward for approval and start turning inward for identity. See, the world conditioned you to be a good guy, to be nice, agreeable, emotionally available, soft. They told you that love means self-sacrifice, that your role is to serve her needs, make her happy, and if you just give enough, she'll never leave. But what if I told you that entire narrative is backwards? Because when you make her your center, you lose your own. And that's when the spiral begins. You become reactive. You overthink every text. You chase her mood swings. You adjust yourself constantly, hoping she'll stay, hoping she'll choose you. But deep down, you know something's off. You were never meant to beg for connection. You were born to command it through your presence, your principles, your purpose. That's where your power lives. When you no longer need her to feel secure. When you stop seeking permission to feel like a man. When you realize that the deepest respect doesn't come from being wanted, it comes from being anchored. So here's the question I want you to sit with right now. Are you chasing approval or reclaiming your identity? Because if you're done with the emotional roller coaster, if you're tired of shrinking yourself just to feel chosen, if you're ready to lead, not follow, then this is your wake-up call. Drop this in the comments right now. I choose power. Not as a performance, not as a tactic, but as a line in the sand. Because this isn't about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who the hell you were before the world made you forget. Stick with me. We're just getting started. Number 1. Breaking the chains of emotional dependency. Let's talk about something real. Something most men feel but never say out loud. We live in a world that quietly conditions men to seek approval, to feel worthy. From the time you were a boy, you were told to be nice. Be agreeable. Don't be too much. Don't upset her. Make sure she's happy, even if that means forgetting about your own needs. And for a while, it might have seemed like that worked. You got some affection, some validation. But deep down, something always felt off. Like no matter how much you gave, it was never enough to keep her. And here's why. Women don't fall in love with a man who needs them. They fall in love with a man who leads himself. They don't crave dependency, they crave energy, presence, purpose, power. Emotional dependency, on the other hand, is like a slow poison to attraction. You might not notice it right away, but it shows up in the way you text back too fast, second-guess your words, overthink every silence, and feel panic when she pulls away. You start adjusting your entire day around her moods. And suddenly, your happiness isn't something you own, it's something she controls. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. And here's the hard truth, brother. No one is coming to save you from that spiral but you. Because the second your value depends on her response, you've already lost your center. You've already surrendered your power. Let me ask you something and be honest. When was the last time you did something solely because you wanted to, not because you thought it would win someone over? When was the last time you looked in the mirror and said, I don't need her to feel like a man, I already am one? That's the moment everything shifts. Because masculine power isn't loud. It's not about ego or domination. It's internal. It's calm. It's grounded. It's knowing who you are even when no one is clapping for you. And women feel that deeply. They feel the difference between a man who chases love to feel complete and a man who gives love from a place of wholeness. The truth is, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to play games or memorize tactics. You just need to stop putting women on a pedestal and start leading your own damn life. Do the hard things. Wake up earlier. Train your body. Strengthen your mind. Build your craft. Become so rooted in who you are that no woman, no rejection, no silence can shake your foundation. Because when a man reclaims his masculine frame, when he breaks free from emotional neediness, when he stops seeking approval and starts embodying value, he becomes undeniable. You don't chase. You attract. Not because you're trying to, but because your energy commands it. And here's the best part. The moment you stop orbiting around women, the moment you stop obsessing over whether she likes you or not, that's the moment you become the kind of man she can't ignore. So if you're tired of being anxious, confused, overthinking every interaction, this is your call to action. Step out of the cage of emotional dependency. Step back into your masculine power. Drop a comment right now and write, "I lead my life." Because this isn't just about dating. This is about becoming the kind of man who never loses himself trying to be enough for someone else. You were already enough. Now it's time to act like it. Number 2, reclaiming your focus. Where attention goes, power grows. Let me tell you something that could change everything. Where your attention goes, your life follows. And right now, most men are bleeding power through the cracks of their attention. We're in a world designed to hijack your focus. Every notification, every like, every seen message, it all trains your mind to chase instant feedback, to scatter your energy in 1,000 directions, to react instead of lead. And here's the brutal result. You become easy to control. Not because you're weak, but because you're distracted. Your attention is your most valuable currency. And yet you spend it on things that don't serve you. You check her Instagram 5 times a day. You reread old messages hoping for meaning. You stay available 24/7 in case she reaches out. All the while, your emotional state rises and falls based on someone else's behavior. Brother, that's not power. That's enslavement. When your focus is scattered, so is your identity. You become reactive, impulsive, emotionally unstable. You start living in response to the world instead of shaping it with intention. And women can feel that. They feel when your energy is pulled in 10 directions. They feel when you're not anchored. And they pull away not because you're not enough, but because you've forgotten where your power actually lives. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if you owned your focus like a warrior owns his blade? What if your attention wasn't something that drifted, but something you commanded? Because here's the truth, most men never realize. Focus is attraction. When a man is locked in on a mission, when he's intentional with his time, his mind, his energy, everything about him becomes more magnetic. He moves differently, speaks differently, carries weight in every room not because he's loud, but because he's present. Presence is rare in a distracted world. And what's rare is always valuable. So how do you reclaim your focus? It starts with discipline. You stop checking your phone every 3 minutes. You stop chasing dopamine through cheap entertainment and cheap validation. You stop handing your attention to people who haven't earned it. Instead, you build. You train your body. You deepen your mind. You channel your energy into a purpose so strong that no silence, no rejection, no emotional game can shake you. That kind of focus creates emotional stability. It makes you unshakable, and that, my brother, is attractive as hell. Because here's what women respect. A man who isn't begging to be seen, but a man who is so absorbed in his mission that he naturally draws attention without even trying. This isn't about ignoring women. It's about putting your energy where it belongs, inside yourself. So if you've been feeling scattered, if your emotions are up and down depending on what she does, if you've lost momentum in your own life, this is your sign to take your focus back. Start today. Drop a comment and write, "I own my focus." Not tomorrow. Not after she replies. Not after the next scroll. Now. Because the men who win in life, the men who rise, lead, and attract naturally, they're not the ones chasing everything. They're the ones who choose where their attention goes and guard it with everything they've got. So ask yourself, what am I feeding my focus to? And is it building the man I'm becoming? The answer starts now. Number 3, live for your mission, not for her approval. Let me ask you something real. What happens when a man makes a woman the center of his life? Not just his time, but his purpose, his mood, his decisions, his identity. I'll tell you what happens. He loses himself. See, most men don't even realize they're doing it. They meet a woman, and suddenly their goals take a back seat. Their routines shift. Their priorities blur. Everything starts orbiting around her, her attention, her opinions, her moods. And at first, she might like the attention. But deep down, she feels the weight. She senses that you've handed her the steering wheel to your life and it becomes too much. Because here's the truth. No woman respects a man who makes her his mission. She respects the man who already has one. Let that sink in. Not because it's harsh, but because it's real. Women are drawn to men who are going somewhere. Men who wake up with purpose. Men who don't pause their life, their growth, or their values for a text back. It's not about ignoring her. It's not about playing games. It's about living in alignment with something bigger than romance. Because when your sense of worth depends on her presence, you stop being the man she was attracted to in the first place. Think about it. She didn't fall for you because you were clingy. She fell for your energy, your ambition, your grounded presence. But the moment you make her the center of your world, you start shrinking. You start needing her to validate you, to remind you that you matter. And over time, that need starts to feel heavy for both of you. But here's the powerful truth. You don't need her to feel worthy. You don't need her to complete you. And you sure as hell don't need her to activate your purpose. Because purpose isn't conditional. A real man leads with vision, with mission, with clarity. He keeps moving forward, building his mind, his body, his legacy with or without her applause. And ironically, that's what makes you even more attractive. Because when a man is committed to something higher, something meaningful, he becomes a force. Not desperate, not distracted, not dependent. He becomes magnetic. Women feel that. They feel the difference between a man who's trying to be chosen and a man who's already chosen himself. And here's the thing. Your purpose doesn't need to be some grand, world-changing thing. It just needs to be yours. Something that anchors you. Something that sharpens you. Something that keeps your feet on the ground when life or love tries to shake you off balance. Because when you live from your mission, you stop chasing temporary highs. You stop abandoning your values for attention. You stop asking, does she like me? And start asking, am I living in integrity with who I came here to be? That shift is everything. So if you've been making her your North Star, if your days revolve around whether she calls, texts, stays, or pulls away, it's time to stop. Not because she doesn't matter, but because you do. Start leading with purpose. Drop a comment below and type, I lead with purpose. Because the most powerful man in the room, he's not chasing approval. He's not waiting for permission. He's too busy building. And when you become that kind of man, she won't be the center of your world. She'll want to join it. Number 4, hold the frame. Lead with standards, not emotion. Let's talk about something most men have never been taught. Every relationship has a frame, a psychological structure that sets the tone for how you show up and how you're treated. And here's the part that most guys get wrong. They don't realize who holds that frame determines everything. If you're constantly reacting to her moods, if you're shifting your energy based on whether she's warm or cold, if your day rises and falls based on her tone, her texts, or her silence, you've already lost the frame. And without the frame, You've lost your ability to lead. Let me explain. In every dynamic, someone is setting the emotional tone, and if you're not doing it, she is. Now here's the tricky part. A lot of men confuse being emotionally available with being emotionally reactive. They think that being a good partner means being overly accommodating, over-explaining, apologizing for things they didn't even do wrong. But when you do that, you're not showing strength. You're showing instability. Because what women truly respond to isn't a man who dances around their emotions. It's a man who stays grounded in spite of them. She doesn't need you to be her therapist. She needs you to be her anchor. So when she tests you, and she will, when she's upset, distant, or throwing out emotional bait, she's not doing it to manipulate you. She's doing it subconsciously to see if you'll flinch, to see if your internal world gets hijacked by her external storm. And when you stay solid, calm, clear, composed, that's when trust is built. That's when attraction deepens. This doesn't mean being cold. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means you lead with standards, not with reactivity. There's a massive difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is instant, emotional, often based in fear. Response is thoughtful, grounded, aligned with your principles. When you hold the frame, you don't allow her chaos to create yours. You don't match her fire with fire. You hold steady, and by doing so, you invite her back to safety. So what does it mean to lead with standards? It means you know who you are and what you stand for. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't chase validation. You don't abandon your values just to keep her from walking away. You set the emotional tone of the relationship not by force, but by presence. It's the man who says, "I hear you, I care, but I won't compromise who I am just to ease the tension." It's the man who doesn't fight to control her but refuses to lose control of himself. And when you live that way, brother, she can relax. Because she doesn't feel like she has to lead. Because she trusts your frame. Let me give you a real-world example. Ever notice how some men can be calm under pressure during arguments, stress, even heartbreak, and others fall apart the moment something feels uncertain? That difference? It's not about personality. It's about emotional leadership. And emotional leadership starts by deciding this: no one dictates the man I am, not even the woman I love. So if you've been losing your frame, if you've been letting your emotions get yanked around like a puppet on a string, it's time to step back into your power. Reclaim your stillness. Reclaim your leadership. Reclaim your emotional standard. And if you're ready to hold the frame, drop a comment right now and write, "I hold the frame." Because the moment you stop being reactive is the moment you start becoming magnetic. Number 5, the power of letting go. Real strength is the ability to walk away. Let me tell you something that might challenge everything you've believed about love, relationships, and what it means to be strong. The man who can walk away at any moment is the one who holds the real power. Not the loudest man, not the one who gives the most gifts, not the one who tries the hardest to please. The strongest man in the room is the one who knows his worth and refuses to beg for what should come naturally: respect, effort, presence, love. See, the man who's afraid to let go, who clings, who compromises everything to avoid being left, that man becomes invisible over time. Not because he's bad, but because he becomes predictable, safe, excessively available. And here's the thing: no one values what they can access for free, 24/7, without effort. That's just human nature. When a woman knows you won't leave, even when she stops showing up, even when she disrespects your time, your boundaries, or your emotional well-being, she loses respect. Not because she's cruel, but because deep down she can feel it. You've abandoned yourself in order to keep her. And nothing kills attraction faster than that. But when your presence is earned, when your time isn't given away like a discount, that's when she starts to see you differently. That's when you stop being just another nice guy and become a man of value. Let me ask you something. Are you staying because you're truly seen? Or are you staying because you're afraid to be alone? Be honest. Because peace doesn't come from holding tighter, it comes from knowing you can walk away and still be whole. And that's the shift. When you stop clinging, when you stop chasing, when you stop needing her to validate your existence, that's when she starts to feel your power. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. You're living it. You're no longer begging to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. And, ironically, that's the energy that makes you more attractive than ever. Not because you're trying to win her, but because you've become the kind of man who doesn't need to. There's a calm, quiet strength in a man who's at peace with losing someone, because he refuses to lose himself. That's rare. And in a world full of emotional desperation, rare is powerful. So how do you step into that? You stop being afraid of the silence. You stop reacting to every shift in her mood. You stop compromising your peace just to avoid uncomfortable conversations. And instead, you focus on becoming a man who's worth staying for. Not because he tries harder, but because he stands taller. You develop your purpose. You build your emotional discipline. You protect your inner world like it's sacred because it is. And when you do that, you stop settling for breadcrumbs. You stop tolerating one-sided dynamics. You stop asking, what can I do to make her stay? And start asking, is this aligned with the man I'm becoming? That's power. That's peace. That's what she'll feel when you walk into a room, even if you say nothing. So if you're ready to stop begging, if you're ready to let go of what's not serving you, if you're ready to find strength in your stillness, drop a comment right now and write, I choose peace. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't holding on tighter, it's having the courage to walk away and never look back. Number 6. Kill the reactive boy. Become the man who controls his emotions. Let's get honest, brother. Every man at some point has to make a decision. Am I going to keep living like a reactive boy? Or evolve into a grounded man who leads with emotional discipline? Here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of grown men are still little boys on the inside. Not physically, but emotionally. You know what I'm talking about. Something triggers them: a cold text, a passive-aggressive comment, a woman pulling away, and boom. They spiral. They argue. They chase. They explode. They beg. That's the reactive boy showing up. And the problem isn't that you feel things you're supposed to feel. The problem is when your feelings own you. When every emotion becomes a command you blindly follow. That's when you lose your edge. That's when women stop trusting you. Because how can she feel safe with a man who can't even regulate himself? See, women will test you. But not to hurt you, to find you. To see what you're made of. To see if you flinch. To see if there's a man behind the mask or just a boy playing dress-up. She might get emotional. She might get distant. She might push your buttons. But underneath all that, she's asking one silent question. Can I lean on you when I can't lean on myself? And if every time she gets loud, you get louder. If every time she pulls back, you chase harder. If every time she tests your energy, you collapse into emotional chaos, you've already lost the frame. You've already lost her trust. Because what she's really craving, whether she can articulate it or not, is a man who doesn't respond from insecurity, but from standards, from stillness, from self-respect. And that begins when you learn the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is emotional, impulsive, instant. Response is grounded, intentional, strategic. The boy reacts. The man observes. He pauses. He breathes. And he asks, what's aligned with the man I'm choosing to be? It's not about being passive. It's about being in control. Because here's the thing. The world is watching how you show up under pressure. And nothing screams power louder than calm in the middle of chaos. Let me give you an example. You're in an argument. She says something sharp, maybe even disrespectful. The boy wants to snap back, yell, prove his point. But the man? He sees past the emotion. He listens to the deeper need. And if the line is crossed, he doesn't explode. He sets a boundary. He steps away if needed. He makes it clear, I don't entertain chaos, I lead with clarity. That kind of presence? That changes everything. Because now you're not just reacting to life, you're leading it. So how do you start killing the reactive boy? You build space between the stimulus and your response. You train your nervous system to stay calm under tension. You stop looking at women's tests as attacks and start seeing them as invitations to rise. She's not looking for a perfect man. She's looking for a present one. One who doesn't fall apart when things get hard. One who doesn't outsource his identity to someone else's approval. And that man? He doesn't chase. He doesn't flinch. He chooses. So if you're ready to stop living like a boy who reacts and start showing up as a man who responds, this is your moment. Drop a comment right now and write, I respond, not react. Because masculine strength isn't about brute force. It's about inner stillness. It's about owning your state no matter what the world throws at you. And that's the kind of man the world respects. That's the kind of man she respects. That's the kind of man you were born to become. Number 7. Master your emotions. Lead yourself before you lead her. Let's get one thing straight right now. Emotional mastery isn't about suppression. It's about direction. See, we've been fed a false image of what it means to be a strong man. A man who never feels, never cries, never flinches. But that's not strength. That's emotional avoidance. And eventually, it breaks you. True masculine power doesn't come from pretending you don't feel. It comes from knowing exactly what to do when you feel deeply. Because here's the reality. You will feel frustration. You will feel triggered, insecure, rejected, disappointed. You're human. But the difference between a man who leads and a man who falls apart is how he channels those emotions. A reactive man lashes out. A numb man shuts down. But a grounded man? He slows down. He listens inward. He asks himself, what is this emotion trying to teach me, and how can I move through it without betraying my values? That's emotional leadership. And here's why it matters in your relationships. Women don't want a man who feels nothing. They want a man who doesn't let his feelings run the show. There's a huge difference. A woman can sense when your emotions are unstable. When you go from confident to needy, the moment she pulls away. When your tone changes because you didn't get the response you wanted. When your self-worth is secretly hanging on her every move. And even if she doesn't say it directly, she starts to lose trust. Because whether she realizes it or not, she's looking for a leader. And you can't lead anyone if you can't lead yourself first. Think of it like this. Your emotional state is the climate of the relationship. If you're unpredictable, stormy one day, sunny the next, she doesn't feel safe. And when a woman doesn't feel safe, she closes up. But when your presence is stable, when she can sense that you know how to handle yourself in moments of tension, fear, and uncertainty, she relaxes. She softens. She follows. Because now you've given her something rare. A man who can hold space for her emotions without being consumed by his own. Let me be clear. This doesn't mean you suppress what you feel. It means you train what you feel. Like a warrior trains his body, you train your emotional muscles. That means you reflect instead of react. You journal instead of explode. You take space instead of chasing in panic. You respond from standards, not from spikes in adrenaline. That's how you become the calm in the storm. Not just for her, but for yourself. Because here's the real win. When you master your emotions, you win your freedom. You're no longer at the mercy of a text message. You're no longer spiraling when things feel uncertain. You're rooted, centered, clear. And that clarity, it makes you dangerous in the best way. Because now you don't need control over anyone else. You've got control over yourself. So, if you've been caught in emotional waves, high one minute, low the next, it's time to reclaim your center. Start showing up as the man who leads with internal power, not external approval. Drop a comment right now and type, "I lead me first." Because the greatest leader in any relationship is the one who leads himself with consistency, integrity, and calm under pressure. That's what builds trust. That's what creates real attraction. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Number 8. Build an irresistible life. Evolve until you're unrecognizable. Let's get real, brother. If your life isn't attractive, your words won't be either. You can say all the right things. You can learn all the high-value phrases. You can memorize every trick and strategy from some dating coach on YouTube. But if your life doesn't back it up, it's just noise. Because women don't fall for what you say. They fall for what you embody. You want to know what's truly magnetic? A man who's in motion. A man who's evolving. A man who's building himself every single day, not to impress others, but because he refuses to stay the same. That's what creates real attraction. Not perfection, not flashy status, not fake confidence. Progress. When a woman sees you on a clear, upward trajectory, emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually, she doesn't need convincing. She feels it. She feels the pull of your gravity. Because deep down, she knows, this man isn't chasing me. He's chasing something bigger. And if I want to be in his world, I have to rise with him. That's the difference between pretending to be high value and actually becoming it. But here's the key. You don't evolve to win her. You evolve because you made a promise to yourself. And that's where most men get stuck. They start improving their life only to get a reaction. They hit the gym so she notices. They post on Instagram hoping she sees. They level up, but it's all a performance. And the second she doesn't respond the way they want, they collapse. They quit. They slide back into comfort. That's not evolution. That's manipulation wearing a nice watch. Let me ask you this. If no one was watching, would you still be growing? Would you still be reading, building, training, creating, even if no one clapped for you? Because that's the mark of a man who's truly becoming. He doesn't need validation. He is the validation. He looks in the mirror and knows he's further than he was yesterday, and that's enough. This kind of man doesn't need to talk about his value. He walks it. He lives it. You feel it in how he moves, how he speaks, how he handles pressure, and how little he chases attention. That's what makes him powerful. That's what makes him unforgettable. So if your life right now doesn't light you up, if you're waiting for someone else to make it exciting, if you're hoping she'll finally see your worth, stop. Flip the script. Ask yourself, what kind of life would make me proud even if no one ever noticed it? Start there. Not to get her, but to outgrow the version of you that used to need her. Because the truth is, when you evolve for you, you stop needing permission. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop performing. And the world, including the right women, starts responding to you differently. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. So if you're ready to stop seeking approval and start becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard, drop a comment below right now and write, "I evolve for me." Because the most attractive version of you isn't the one that wants to be seen. It's the one that's too busy becoming something so powerful, so focused, so alive, that even you don't recognize him anymore. Number 9. Lead without chasing. Inspire. Don't beg. Let me ask you something, brother. When you show up in a woman's life, are you leading or are you chasing? There's a world of difference between the two. And deep down, you already feel it. Chasing is rooted in fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if you don't prove your worth fast enough, she'll walk away. So you overcompensate. You double text. You rearrange your schedule. You explain yourself over and over. And little by little, you trade your power for proximity. But here's what most men never realize. The more you chase, the faster she runs. Because chasing gives off one undeniable signal. Lack. Lack of self-respect. Lack of purpose. Lack of internal leadership. And no woman, no matter how emotionally mature, is drawn to a man who's operating from emptiness. Now contrast that with leading. Leading isn't about controlling her. It's not about dominating the dynamic. It's about direction. It's about presence. It's about consistency in who you are, no matter who's watching. You lead when you're grounded in your values. You lead when your actions are intentional, not reactive. You lead when you stop trying to convince someone of your worth and start living it. Because, let's be real, leadership isn't something you announce. It's something you embody. And women feel that. She knows when you're guiding the energy of the relationship, not by forcing it, but by holding steady through emotional waves. She feels safe around a man who doesn't panic when things get uncertain, who doesn't push, who doesn't beg. Because leadership doesn't beg, it inspires. When you lead with strength, peace, and clarity, you give her something rare in today's world. A man who doesn't need her to complete him, but who invites her to walk alongside someone complete. That's attractive. That's unforgettable. Now, let me say this clearly. There's a time to pursue. There's a time to initiate, to express interest, to move forward boldly. But that's not the same as chasing. Pursuit is action driven by purpose. Chasing is reaction driven by fear. And if you've been stuck in that chase loop, overanalyzing every text, trying to win her over by outgiving, out-talking, out-waiting, it's time to stop. Because the truth is, the woman who's right for you, she doesn't need to be convinced. She needs to feel that you're already enough with or without her. So, flip the script. Focus on your mission. Move with direction. Stay anchored in your values, not her approval. Because when you lead with certainty, you attract the right energy naturally. You stop pulling and start drawing in. You become the kind of man who doesn't chase anything, because what's meant for him is already moving in his direction. So, if you've been giving away your power in pursuit of someone else's validation, reclaim it. Not by walking away from connection, but by walking toward yourself. Drop a comment right now and write, "I lead, I don't chase." Because that's what leadership looks like. Calm, focused, intentional, not loud, not needy, just clear. The kind of leadership that doesn't just get noticed, it gets respected. Number 10. Become the calm storm. Power comes from inner stillness. Let me ask you something straight up. When life gets chaotic, do you become the chaos or the calm? Because here's a truth most men don't fully understand. Real power isn't loud. It's not aggressive. It's not about flexing. It's about being unshakable in the middle of the storm. See, women don't test you to break you. They test you to feel you, to find out if you're rooted or if you're faking it. Because any man can talk a good game when everything's going his way. But the real test, it's when emotions rise, when she's upset, when you're uncertain, when tension fills the space and you can either collapse or center up. And she's watching, maybe not consciously, but instinctively, to see, can I trust this man to hold the frame when I can't? Can I lose control around him without losing him in the process? Because here's what attraction is at its core. Safety meets intensity. And most men only bring the second half. They bring bravado, energy, ambition. But when real emotional weight enters the room, they disappear. They react. They match chaos with chaos. But the rare few, they do something different. They stay. They breathe. They lead. And that's what makes them unforgettable. You don't have to raise your voice to be powerful. You don't have to win every argument to be respected. You just have to refuse to abandon yourself when things get uncomfortable. That kind of presence, calm, grounded, consistent, it creates something most women never get to feel in a man: emotional safety. It's not about being passive. It's about being anchored. It's about being so rooted in your values, your purpose, your inner clarity, that nothing she throws at you can knock you off center. You're not afraid of her emotions. You can hold space for them. You're not rattled by silence. You know how to sit with it. You're not constantly reacting because you've trained yourself to respond. And that's what separates a man who's attractive from a man who's magnetic. Think of it like this. A storm doesn't chase validation. A storm doesn't panic when things don't go as planned. A storm just is. It owns the space. It doesn't ask permission. And the paradox? The man who becomes the storm not in chaos, but in controlled presence, that's the man women remember. That's the man women trust. That's the man other men look at and say, damn, he's just built different. So how do you get there? You stop running from your emotions. You stop outsourcing your sense of peace. You train your nervous system. You master your breath. You journal. You move. You create space between stimulus and response. And most importantly, you stop giving your power away to things you can't control. You start leading from within. Because the man who controls himself controls the room. So if you're ready to stop reacting, if you're ready to stop chasing, proving, pleasing, if you're ready to become the man who walks into chaos and brings clarity with him, drop a comment right now and write, I am the storm. Not as a flex, not as a line, but as a quiet vow you make to yourself. That from this moment forward, your presence will speak louder than your words ever could. And if you're on this journey with us, if you're committed to building that quiet strength, that unshakable masculinity, that self-led confidence, hit subscribe. This isn't just a channel. It's a movement, a path for men who are done being tossed by waves and ready to become the tide. Number 11. The power of solitude. Why strong men embrace being alone. Let's talk about something that most men avoid, but every powerful man must learn to master: the ability to be alone. Not just alone in your apartment, not just alone without a relationship. I'm talking about being truly alone, without distraction, without noise, without the need to constantly be validated, entertained, or surrounded. Because here's a harsh truth. Most men aren't afraid of being alone physically. They're afraid of who they are when it's quiet. But the men who rise, the ones who lead, attract, and build real power, they treat solitude not as punishment, but as preparation. See, weak men need to be constantly surrounded. They need the group, the girlfriend, the constant back-and-forth text conversations. Why? Because stillness terrifies them. Silence forces them to confront themselves. And they haven't built a version of themselves worth sitting with. But strong men, they crave solitude. Because solitude is where the sharpening happens. Where the inner voice gets louder than the outside world. Where you stop performing and start becoming. When you can sit alone, in full presence, without reaching for a distraction, that's when you know you're no longer driven by lack. You're driven by alignment. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you took yourself out, not because you had no one, but because you wanted to? When was the last time you sat with your own thoughts and felt peace instead of panic? If the idea of being alone makes you anxious, you're not actually lonely. You're uncentered. Because real masculinity isn't forged in attention. It's forged in isolation. It's in those early mornings when no one's watching. In the quiet walks. In the cold showers. In the hours spent building something that matters even when no one is clapping. And here's the paradox that most people never talk about. The man who's comfortable being alone becomes the man who is never truly alone. Because his energy changes. He walks with gravity. He radiates calm. And people are drawn to that, especially women. Women aren't attracted to a man who needs them to feel whole. They're attracted to the man who's already whole and chooses them anyway. That's rare. That's powerful. When you become a man who enjoys his own company, who doesn't need constant emotional validation, who's not swiping, scrolling, chasing just to fill a void, you stop being someone hoping to be picked, and you become someone who chooses. You choose who enters your space. You choose who deserves your time. You're no longer a servant to attention. You're the architect of your reality. And that energy, that quiet self-ownership, it's magnetic. So if you've been terrified of the silence, if you've been jumping from distraction to distraction, if you've been filling every free moment with noise, this is your invitation to pause, to stop, to sit, to be, because the man who can enjoy his own solitude is the man who can lead others, the man who doesn't fall apart when a woman pulls back, the man who can walk away not out of ego, but out of clarity. So if you're ready to stop fearing being alone, if you're ready to build a life that feels full with or without anyone else in it, drop a comment right now and write, "I choose solitude." Because solitude isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. And when you wield it with confidence, you become the man who no longer waits to be chosen. You are the one who chooses. Number 12. The power of silence. When saying nothing is the strongest response. Let me tell you something most men never get taught. Sometimes, your silence speaks louder than anything you could ever say. We live in a world that's obsessed with noise. Everyone wants to be heard, to prove a point, to defend their name, to get the last word in. But the strongest men? They've mastered something far more powerful: the discipline of silence. Because here's what most don't realize. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a choice. And when used with intention, it becomes one of the most potent forms of communication a man can wield. There are moments when no explanation is needed. When arguing only lowers you. When trying to be understood only feeds someone else's drama. And in those moments, the man who can stay calm, stay centered, stay quiet, he wins. Not by dominance, not by shouting, but by making his absence louder than his words could ever be. See, when a woman pulls away, when she throws a test your way, when she tries to provoke emotion, most men react. They get defensive. They chase. They start explaining, pleading, over-texting, over-speaking. But the man who simply holds his ground, who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't argue, that man creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, she feels his absence. She notices the shift. She starts to wonder what he's thinking, what he's feeling, why he's not reacting like the others did. That's where the power is. Because silence forces reflection. It triggers curiosity. It commands attention without demanding it. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a moment where someone didn't respond the way you expected, and that silence got into your head more than any words ever could? That's not an accident. That's psychological weight. And as a man, when you carry yourself with calm, grounded energy, when you choose not to engage in every emotional firestorm, You begin to shape the dynamic, not react to it. It doesn't mean you become emotionally distant. It means you become emotionally sovereign. You speak when it adds value, and you're silent when speaking would only serve ego or chaos. Women feel this kind of man. He's rare. He's unpredictable, not because he's playing games, but because he's not driven by insecurity. He knows his value. He knows his boundaries. And he doesn't need to explain himself to be understood. In fact, sometimes the most attractive thing you can do is say nothing at all. You don't need to justify your standards. You don't need to over-explain your decisions. You don't need to respond to every test. You just need to stay rooted and let your energy do the talking. Because when a man says less, but lives with clarity, that's when people lean in. That's when women listen. That's when your presence becomes felt, even in your silence. So, if you've been over-explaining, over-texting, trying too hard to be clear, take a breath and ask yourself, is this moment asking for a response or for my restraint? Because the man who knows when to be silent is a man in full control of himself. And a man in control of himself is in control of the room. So if you're ready to master the art of calm strength, to stop reacting and start leading with presence, drop a comment right now and write, I speak when it's time. I lead in silence. Because your silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means what you do say will matter. And that, brother, is power. Let's bring it all home. If there's one thing I want you to remember from this entire journey, it's this. You don't need to chase power. You are power when you learn to own yourself. The strongest men in the world aren't the ones trying to control others. They're the ones who have learned to master themselves. Their emotions, their focus, their energy, their standards, their silence. It's not about domination. It's not about tactics. It's not about playing games to get someone to like you. It's about becoming so grounded in who you are, so clear in what you stand for, that your very presence speaks louder than any performance ever could. See, we live in a culture that teaches men to win women, to get the girl, to conquer attention. But real masculine power isn't about conquest. It's about clarity. It's not about chasing, it's about elevating. Elevating your thoughts. Elevating your standards. Elevating the way you move through the world with dignity, discipline, and direction. That's what creates attraction. That's what creates peace. That's what creates the kind of man who doesn't need to prove anything. Because everything about how he shows up already speaks for itself. And that, brother, takes training. This isn't a quick fix. It's not a 3-step hack. It's a lifelong path of masculine refinement, of walking into discomfort instead of avoiding it, of choosing solitude over validation, of leading from the inside out, not from ego, not from fear, not from desperation. Because once you've built that kind of self-control, once you've trained your nervous system to stay calm in the face of chaos, once you've let go of the need to be chosen and instead become the one who chooses, that's when you stop chasing power and you become it. Let me leave you with this. You are not here to prove your worth. You're here to remember it, to reclaim it, to live it. You're not here to chase women. You're not here to play emotional games. You're not here to shrink yourself just to be tolerated. You're here to rise. You're here to lead. You're here to embody something bigger than approval. Because true masculinity isn't loud. It doesn't beg. It doesn't flinch. It just is. And when you live from that place, from presence, not performance, everything starts to align. So take a breath, stand tall, and remind yourself every day, I don't need to take power, I am the power. We're not here to chase. We're here to elevate. If you found a sense of peace in this message, Follow us to keep receiving ancient wisdom for modern life. Thank you for being part of Ancient Stoic Secrets. And before you go, share this with someone who needs it today, because strength multiplies when it's shared. Let's keep rising together.